Halliburton double team, shot clock at 4. Nembhard's got to put it up. Step back, his three-pointer. Bang! Nembhard knocks the three down. Timeout, Knicks.
Anthony attacks. Hibbert denies him at the rim. Block number 5 for the Pacers center.
Wow, what a play.
Miller for 3, and he got it. Reggie Miller with a clutch tray, and it's 105-102. And a steal. Miller retreats to the three-point line and hits again.
Tie game.
Reggie Miller made a 3, stole the ball, raced behind the three-point line, and hit again.
Look, I know people are like, aren't you worried about going back to New York City and calling a game? No. I've owned this city. I've owned this building. So why would I be worried about walking on out there?
Harper to get it in. Throws it to Ewing. Ewing surrounded. 2 seconds to shoot. He drives. He shoots. He missed. He missed. He missed. We ring the bell, baby. Ding dong. The witch is dead. And the Pacers have won it 97-95. And we're going to Disney World.
Hello, Pacer fans, and welcome back to the Pacers Fever Show, your home for everything blue and gold. Tonight, we're looking ahead to Game 5 of what's already a thriller of a series. The Indiana Pacers are heading back to enemy territory in Madison Square Garden. The history on their side and destiny in their sights. That's right, the Indiana Pacers have won 3 straight postseason games at the Garden, including that unforgettable Game 7 knockout punch in 2024 that sent the Knicks packing. And now they've got the chance to do it again, to close out the series and to send the Garden into stunned silence once more. But the Knicks, they're not going to go quietly. Their backs are against the wall and they know it's a win or go home situation. Can the Pacers ride the momentum, silence the crowd, and punch their ticket to the NBA Finals? Or will the Knicks rally, protect their house, and force a Game 6 back in Indianapolis? Buckle up, because we've got the matchups, the keys to the game, and everything you need to know before tip-off for Game 5. This is the Pacers Fever Show. Let's get into it. My name is Logan. I am the host of the podcast. We are over on YouTube. If you would like to see the video version of the podcast, I have a rundown over there where it has all the talking points for the episode and some nice little graphics. And then if you are interested in the audio version, we do have the audio version on anywhere you can find podcasts, which is Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean. There's all sorts of different streaming platforms for the audio listeners. So really excited to have you all join us, and very excited about what the Pacers have done in this series. They're only one win away from the first NBA Finals appearance since 2000, and only their second in franchise history. The Indiana Pacers have never won an NBA title, and they will be hoping to get the chance to close out the Knicks and advance to try to take out either the Oklahoma City Thunder or the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Western Conference, sorry, my cat, if you're on the video, you got to see quite a treat. The cat just scared me. She closed the door and about jumped out of my skin, but she's excited too. But yeah, the Pacers, again, can face OKC or the Timberwolves. That series, the Western Conference Finals, is OKC 3 and the Minnesota Timberwolves 1. That game is going to be played tonight. I'm recording this on Wednesday at 8:30, so about an hour away from tip-off for the Western Conference Finals, and that's back in OKC. Don't really feel good about Minnesota's chances, just because, really, I mean, I think they gave them their best shot in Game 3, a really good shot in Game 4, but OKC were able to pull that out and take the series back home with a 3-1 advantage. I just don't see Minnesota beating that OKC team 3 times in a row. So I think the Thunder have punched their ticket, but all have punched their ticket, all but punched their ticket to the NBA Finals. That's what I was trying to say. I couldn't get words out. Words are hard sometimes, you know? So, yeah, looking forward to seeing that series tonight come to an end, or if maybe the Wolves extend it and give whoever's, maybe advancing, maybe the Pacers, some extra rest as we head into the NBA Finals, which will kick off next Thursday, June 5th. And that will be the first game on ESPN that night. And it very well could be in Oklahoma City, and we will probably find out tonight if that's the case. But yes, let's talk about game 5 because that's what we're here to do. The number 3 Knicks versus the number 4 Pacers. This series, again, is a 3-1 lead for the Indiana Pacers. They win a huge game at Gainbridge Fieldhouse on Tuesday night, May 27th, 130 to 121. The Knicks looked exhausted at the end of that game. And at the end of the quarters, the Pacers just took care of business every single one of those quarters. The Pacers ended on a nice run to give themselves a really good chance in the fourth to seal the deal. And really, towards the end of the game, Pacers put it away with about 47 seconds left when Obi Toppin hits a 3 to go up 10. You felt like that was the ultimate dagger that the Knicks were not coming back from that. And again, like I said, they looked exhausted in game 4. We talked about this at the top of the series here where we previewed the Knicks and Pacers Eastern Conference Finals, where I said, and you can go back and look, and I might even pull the audio. I said the Pacers could win this series in 5, but I picked Pacers in 6. Reason why I thought that was just because of the depth and that being a tremendous challenge for the Knicks to try to have to keep up with this Pacer team who likes to run and has been the best offense in the NBA in this postseason and one of the better defenses as well. I think that they caused a lot of mismatch issues with the Knicks. And I texted this to my group chat that I'm in that, this series has been so close and a lot of these games neck and neck and a lot of things having to happen that, teams trying to get an advantage, and they were trying to figure out where they could get an advantage. And I think because of the mismatches and how these teams align against one another, it just is so difficult to try to gain an advantage in this series for either team because they really don't match up well against one another. I think the Knicks have a great starting lineup. They had started Josh Hart with Karl Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and Jalen Brunson. As the playoffs went on, they started to feel that starting lineup might not work. And then once it got to the Pacers series, they made the move, and they said they had considered it in the Boston series and even Detroit at times, where Mitchell Robinson was the better selection to give the Knicks some defensive stability in the starting lineup. And Josh Hart's a good defender, but struggles with size, obviously, and 4s and 5s take advantage of him, and he's oftentimes stuck guarding some of them. And there were times that he's been stuck with the assignment of guarding Pascal Siakam, and that's not been somebody that he can stop. And when OG Anunoby needs a break, he's Hart draws that assignment. So they thought, what, let's insert Mitchell Robinson into the starting lineup. I think that can give us an advantage. He's a great offensive rebounder. He's a good defender. I think that he does well when you're playing a team that does have a lot of screens and actions to put big guys in screens, because I think he keeps up well enough defensively. But the Pacers, I just felt like, with the defensive weaknesses that the Knicks present on that end of the court, I just feel like the Pacers have way too much depth, way too many attacking players to really try to stop them. The Knicks were really going to struggle with that. And with the tempo the Pacers played, they didn't really have the option of going to a double big lineup, but they tried it anyway because the first 2 games were just not good for the Knicks. They make that change. They removed Josh Hart from the starting lineup. Mitchell Robinson is paired up with Karl Anthony Towns in game 3, and it didn't work. I mean, it still doesn't work. And, they had a good plus minus when on the court together when Mitchell was able to get a lot of offensive rebounds and really control the paint. But because of Rick Carlisle, that changed. Miles Turner, you can tell a big focus of his has been keeping Mitchell Robinson off the glass when he's been inserted into the starting lineup. I thought Miles has done a really nice job of just getting a body to him and not letting him get any kind of lift off of the floor. Miles is really good at being able to do that for stretches of games. And while he's not a good rebounder, I think Miles has done a really nice job of eliminating Mitchell Robinson. But the biggest change was when Rick Carlisle went to Tony Bradley. He goes to a guy that's a 14th to 15th option off the Pacers bench at times, and it worked well. Tony Bradley's got a big body. He's able to knock Mitchell Robinson around some, and he's lengthy enough to where he can get to the ball more so than Mitchell Robinson can, and he's neutralized any kind of effect that Mitch has had on the game. And Robinson's not going to provide a lot of things offensively. So if you can keep him at bay on the offensive glass and keeping him in actions when you're trying to get pick and rolls and just moving the basketball and pulling him away from the basket, as Miles and Pascal did, then he just becomes ineffective in this series. And you have seen that. He has been a non-factor. It's almost like the Pacers are playing just some guy that's just stable enough to where maybe scores a couple points, but other than that, his presence isn't really felt by the Pacers. It actually helps the Pacers just because, again, they've proven time and time again. And I don't know if Thibodeau didn't go back and watch the Cavs series, but the Cavs, they also use a 2-big lineup, and with Mobley and Jarrett Allen, the Pacers were better when the two of them were on the floor together because the spacing, the ability to shoot from the outside and the perimeter from Pascal Siakam and Miles Turner, they can spread out the bigs, get them away from the rim. And then Tyrese Halliburton likes to operate in that area and get into the paint, and there's no rim protector there. And if there is, the Pacers are really good at getting Miles and Pascal out to the corners and pulling the bigs to where a guard is having to try to defend Halliburton at the rim. And it's just worked well for the Pacers. And it really worked well against the Cavs, who have the defensive player of the year and Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, who's a very strong defender. They just tore them to shreds because Cleveland could not afford to play those two bigs with the amount of pace and spacing and movement of the ball and the actions that Tyrese was putting them through. They couldn't keep up. So that was a big weakness that the Cavs had, and the Pacers exploited it. And there was nothing that the Cavs could really do. They're not going to move either of them to the bench. Whereas the Knicks, at least they had a small lineup that somewhat works. And to be honest with you, I felt like game 1 and even game 2, they were better defensively when Josh Hart was in the starting lineup compared to Mitch. And they go away from that because there were stretches where Carl and Mitch had good minutes together as a rotation when Mitch came off the bench. And they thought, you know what, we were more reliable in those situations. But for the whole extent of the game, Mitchell Robinson, one, hasn't played starter minutes, so he's not used to that. He's not ever been healthy for a whole season, really. So he's, and you could tell he was laboring in this last game. And towards the end of this game, the Pacers, they made the Knicks look like it was the old folks home. OG Anunoby twists his ankle as he's trying to chase down the Pacers, running down in transition. He hurts his ankle. Karl Anthony Towns tries to get in the way of Aaron Nesmith, and that doesn't end well for him as they collide and knock knees together. And now Towns is on the injury report with a bruised knee, and he's questionable to play tomorrow. I think he plays, but he looked really labored and not very limber. He just looked like he couldn't move up and down the floor at all, even before the contact and the knee injury. Jalen Brunson, again, he's done some things where he's kind of stepped awkwardly on a knee or an ankle, and he kind of looks banged up. Josh Hart too. It happened to him last year, and I texted this to the group chat. Obviously you don't root for injury, but it seems like this Knicks team just can't withstand a series with a really fast-paced young team like the Pacers. They just completely come undone. So again, a lot of that's just the way you build your team, build your roster around guys that are a little bit older, that are trying to compete at a high level and the intensity in which they play. But I think there's still a lot, and people will say that it's not a big deal, but I still believe I'm in the camp of thinking that as much as Tibbs plays these guys, that's part of the problem that they have towards the end of the season. They get gassed. These guys are playing 40-minute a night games in the middle of February for no reason. So things are going to change. I think in New York, Pacers knock the Knicks out, and I can almost guarantee you that Tom Thibodeau will not be the coach of the head coach of the New York Knicks. Could be wrong. In just the fact that Brunson seems to really like him, and that's a key to keeping Brunson happy as having Thibodeau around. But I think if you're a front office, that's number one problem for me. And part of the reason why I don't think the Knicks have been able to get past these Pacers is just the fact that they just don't build this roster correctly. And then when they're playing throughout the season, they only trust 7 guys to play in these games, and the guys just get exhausted. Mikal Bridges supposedly said something, and then they backtrack that, and Mikal Bridges is like, "No, we never say anything like that." And OG and Anobi too, like, "No, we didn't. We didn't say that we play too much." That came from somewhere. That came from somebody on the inside talking to the media or to a league source or somebody inside the New York Knicks organization that found out that the players have issues with the amount of time that they play. And, Anunoby, Towns, and Bridges come from different organizations. Brunson, too. I mean, they all come from different organizations. Josh Hart, I don't think, is bothered by it, but I can't imagine that the other 4 benefit from playing 40 minutes a game. They just look absolutely worn out every time they get to this point in the postseason. And that's just because of all the work that they have to do during the regular season. And they were trying to chase down Boston. They were trying to stay away from the Pacers and the Bucks and even the Pistons. I mean, they were trying to separate themselves for home court advantage because they know how big of an advantage supposedly Madison Square Garden has been. But to be honest with you, it seems like this team actually is more scared of the bright lights in Madison Square Garden than the away team that comes in to play them. I think a lot of that's just internal pressure and external pressure. There's a lot of anxiousness, I think, with this Knicks team, especially when they play at home, because if things start to go south, their crowd is relentless. A New York fan base has always been relentless with its players, with its teams. When they're not performing in the way that Knicks fans expect or New York fans expect, they are the quickest to turn on you. And you've seen the way that that's happened in their past. When Ewing's team couldn't get past Reggie and Michael, you saw New York City turn on them, and the guys just didn't want to do it anymore. They get exhausted by the New York media and the shenanigans in the city and everything else that goes along with being a sports player in that city. I would say most of them are very uncomfortable at times just because of how much pressure is put on them by Knicks fans. And because New York fans have not really had a whole lot to celebrate about since the Yankees. It's, back in the early 2000s, this city has been suffering for a very long time with their sports franchises. And they'll continue to do so because the Giants are awful. The Jets are horrible. Brooklyn isn't ever really anything. The Nets. So you can't really talk about that. I mean, if you're a WNBA fan, you've got the Liberty. At least they're good. But you look up and down these New York sports franchises, and they consistently put out underwhelming teams or teams that choke in the playoffs. I mean, you look at the Yankees, how they're built currently. They can't get to the promised land. The Mets hire, they hire a bunch of Milwaukee Brewer front office guys, and they seem to be headed in the right direction and on the right track. They get Juan Soto, but that's to be determined how that experiment works out, and they hope it does. But after Soto, they don't go and sign a bunch of people, so they're just kind of stuck with this makeshift team. They're a good team, but again, I just keep going in these New York teams because there's so much pressure being in that market, and you can feel it. You can feel it every time that the Pacers have played them. I think playing at Madison Square Garden, there's a reason they're 3-5 in the postseason. There's just so much pressure on these players to perform. And again, the minute it starts to go south, it seems like the Garden becomes antsy. They become this, pessimistic, self-sabotaging fan base, and it kind of leaks out into the players. And I think it's probably not a great feeling as a Knicks player, because I really do enjoy a lot of these guys on the Knicks team. I really like Jalen Brunson. I like Josh Hart. I like OG Anunoby. Cat, I'm not really a fan of, but there's some really likable guys on this team. I just think that the Pacers have their number, and have a really good chance to put a ton of pressure on the Knicks in Game 5 in Madison Square Garden. And we're going to get into the preview now because there's just so much writing on this game for both franchises, I believe. And I was actually recording this episode for about 20 minutes prior to this current recording and had realized I didn't change the graphics over on YouTube, but I've changed them now. And again, on YouTube, I have the rundown so you can see all the talking points that we're going to get into in each of the episodes. And those are that are listening on the audio version or podcast version. Thanks for listening along. I'll read out the rundown as we go through it, just so you know what talking points we're getting into. And this first one is keeping the pace. So this has been the story of this series, is whichever team has dictated the pace in the game for the majority of the game has come out and won. And, some people will say, well, yeah, that's obvious. Like whichever team's playing the game they want to play is obviously the one that's going to win. But their styles, I think, are just so drastically different. And we're in Game 5 now. You understand what the Pacers are going to want to do. You're going to understand what the Knicks are going to want to do. But I just feel like the way that the Knicks are playing right now, it just doesn't work in the modern NBA. And I think that there could be some questions about Jalen Brunson and what kind of piece he needs beside him to compete in the postseason. They did really well to play against that Boston team, but that Boston team was riddled with injuries, as we come to find out as that their season comes to an end. As Tatum tears his Achilles, you also find out that Jaylen Brown was playing on a torn meniscus. Kristaps Porzingis is some kind of mystery illness that they've not figured out. Drew Holiday has a major shoulder issue that he was trying to fight through. Derek White and them hobbled and banged up from the regular season. So it was just not a healthy Celtics team. This Knicks team was very lucky to get out of the first round because I thought Detroit for maybe over half that series was the better team, but the Knicks were able to pull out games in the clutch, got some controversial calls. The Pistons fumbled games at home. I think that the Knicks could look back at that and go, you know what? We weren't really that strong to begin with. I mean, the Pistons almost knocked us out. Jason Tatum, I know a lot of Boston fans are like, we would have come back if Tatum didn't get hurt. I don't know. That game did start to look like it was going to go to the Knicks, and they just put themselves in an incredible hole because the first two games, the Celtics didn't even look like themselves. I mean, they shot themselves out of the game 25 from 100 from the three-point line. It's just not Celtic basketball. So I think if you're a Knicks fan, while you're very happy with the position that you got in, and honestly, you made the Pacer fans nervous. I can tell you that from just personal experience in Game 4 because they threw some punches in Game 4. And also leading up to that game, I felt like without Aaron Nesmith 100% healthy and with Cat playing the way that he'd played in Game 3, and he loves to play at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. He's always scored really well there. He's a Pacer killer. And then you had Jalen Brunson, who I thought was going to come out and just be an absolute juggernaut on offense, and a 40-point game would probably have been something I would have expected from him. He played really well in moments in that game yesterday, but I felt like down the stretch, obviously, he wasn't very good. And when Aaron Nesmith was on him, he was not very good. And we'll talk about that later on in the series. But long-winded to say, you know what you're going to get now in this series from each of these teams. Now it's just about the minor adjustments. Once you get to Game 4, Game 5, and Game 6, Game 7, it's really the minor adjustments because you've really figured out what each of the teams is going to want to do to attack one another defensively and offensively. There's not usually a whole big wrinkle thrown into a series late in a series sometimes, but it's very rare and very seldom, far and few between. But I don't feel like the Knicks, the only thing I could see the Knicks doing is going back to the Josh Hart in the starting lineup. But, I think that Thibodeau's ready to kind of die on the hill of playing Mitchell Robinson and hoping that he can be effective enough on the offensive glass and and do things defensively that will cause the Pacers problems, especially with the energy of the home crowd. Mitchell Robinson is going to play better. Your role players are going to get more intensity added to what they're already doing. And I think that the Knicks role players are going to play pretty well in game 5. They're going to be desperate. But there's also this aspect of me that does think about what a game 5 means for the Knicks and their future of this current roster of Tom Thibodeau. What they do and approach and how they approach this offseason will be very interesting. And Shams already said that this is going to be the most exciting NBA offseason that we've had probably in the history of the NBA. And I'm starting to believe that because I think there's a lot of big pieces that could be on the move. But there's also a lot of desperate teams in the Eastern Conference that, with Jason Tatum going down and the Celtics being in a really weird tax predicament where they're going to have to move on from some of their core pieces, I believe, it opens up the Eastern Conference when the Celtics aren't standing there and owning it. And now that you've seen the Knicks are vulnerable as well, and the Cavs are going to be searching for answers. There's already reports out of Cleveland that Darius Garland and Jared Allen are going to be shopped around in the offseason to see if Cleveland can add another big piece to that roster. So that'll be something to monitor. The Magic are going to be looking for somebody on the offensive end and probably looking to see how they can play Franz and Paolo Banchero together. Detroit's going to be looking for another big piece to add to their team because they're one big piece away from being a top 4 team, I truly believe, in the Eastern Conference because Cade Cunningham is that good. Now he just needs somebody to play with. They add Jaden Ivey back into the mix next year. So I think that's going to be a really fun young team. But again, this is the first time in a very long time that I felt like the Eastern Conference is wide open because of the injuries that have happened to Boston. And Boston's still going to be a very good team. Boston could even go in and add a really good player and superstar, but it'll also depend on the health of that team. I think there's a lot of health issues. Older team, they're going to be getting rid of some of those pieces. So I think that's what the rest of the Eastern Conference is an opportunity. And the Pacers can do something here in game 5 that not only helps their chances, obviously, to win the title this year, because obviously if they win game 5, they're on to the NBA Finals and playing probably Oklahoma City Thunder. But I think if the Pacers knock off the Knicks, then the Knicks are going to go back to the drawing board and try to figure out why this team doesn't work together. I think they've seen that in the postseason. I think that's the hardest thing for Knicks fans to kind of wrap their heads around. And if I'm a Knicks fan, I would be very disappointed in not just the way that they've performed in this series, but disappointed in the fact that it doesn't look like Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson can play together in a starting lineup because of how poorly they both play defensively. They're both huge liabilities on the defensive end. And I've talked about this time and time again, where in the NBA, you can have one bad defender in a unit, but the minute you put 2 bad defenders on the floor together in the NBA, you will get absolutely torched. And you better have really good offensive players in those spots because that's the only way you're going to be able to keep up if you've got 2 gaping holes in your defense. And that's the way I've always felt. And the Knicks have that. Karl Anthony Towns has proven time and time again he will just not be a good defender. Jalen Brunson, I believe, is too small to be a good defender. And to be honest, the way that he plays offensively, you don't really want him exerting a ton of energy on the defensive end. So at least if he's just the one defensive liability you have, you can hide him on somebody and he doesn't have to exert all that energy. But the Knicks, they're going to go back to the drawing board if the Pacers are able to knock them out. So this is a big game for the future of the Pacers, for their title contending window, because it doesn't just end this year. The Pacers are set up really well. Yeah, there's rumors out there that the Simons are willing to go into the luxury tax, which they've never been willing to before, to sign Miles Turner and keep this core mostly together and even maybe add a piece. So we'll see what the future holds, but the Pacers' time is now. And I'm not talking that it's just this year or bust. The Pacers have a good stretch of probably 2 to 3 years right now to really contend for a title every single year in the Eastern Conference if they stay healthy and they sign Miles Turner. It's that important. So that's why coming into game 5, I don't think obviously the Pacers are thinking about the future like that. but we can as fans, right? Because we're removed from the situation. They're going to be focused on the game at hand. And I know we can't get too far ahead of ourselves and say that this series is over, because by no means am I saying that this series is over. It could very well still go to the Knicks if the Knicks do what they need to do in the next 2 games and force a game 7, because anything can happen in a game 7, right? We always say that. It's a cliche thing to say, but it's true. I mean, there's so many things, so many variables that go into win or go home for both teams. And the Pacers cannot let it get to that. So whatever they have to do in the next game or the next 2 games, if they have to go back to Indy to finish this out, they have to know that they are the ones that control their own destiny. And the way that you're going to do that, starting this episode out, we're going to talk about keeping that pace. Halliburton hit the gas right off of the jump, repeatedly, attacked Karl Anthony Towns, Jalen Brunson in a pick and roll, got tons of great looks for all of his teammates, score 40 points in the first quarter. They ended up scoring 43 points in that first quarter. And on the second half and on Sunday, they only scored 42 points. So already after the first quarter, they had already beaten their half total for the game before, where they really just let the Knicks back into the game. And had the Pacers not done that in game 3, we're talking about the Pacers being in the NBA Finals right now, because I believe they would have swept them. But the biggest difference from game 3 to game 4 and when it went stagnant, and I wouldn't even say the first half, because the first half of game 3 was really good for the Pacers, just that 18-minute stretch where they really struggled, it was because the Pacers stopped running. They're bringing the ball up in the half court, and their half court offense, it needs some work. It's been pretty good in the postseason. It was not that great in the the regular season, but they got away with it because of just how fast they play, that their pace eventually caught them up. If they were playing poorly and getting and teams were slowing them down on the offensive end, the Pacers would just keep running in the regular season, and it ended up playing out really well for them. But coming out of it, I mean, even on makes, the ball, there was a great video. I think it was Legler. Yeah, it was Legler on Scott Van Pelt. It was really cool what they were doing, showing how the Pacers instantly after a make, it's usually, Neesmith or Turner grab the ball out of a make and step out of bounds to advance the ball. And it showed Tyrese Halliburton already starting to go into his sprint down toward the other side of the court, and that player hits him on an outlet pass. And by the time that happens, it showed 3 Knicks players in a line against the 3 Pacers players in a line. And as soon as that ball went through the net, the Pacer players took 2 giant burst of speed steps and just went flying up the court with Halliburton. And the Knicks players are like, oh my gosh, sprinting after the Pacer players that had just broken away, and Tyrese Halliburton gets it on the run, and then they're in transition off of a make. It's crazy. Like it's absolutely wild, and they benefit from present day NBA because a lot of guys like to just watch their ball go through the net and don't really think about getting back on defense. And that's a natural reaction for a player after they shoot and make a basket, is to kind of backpedal. But if you're playing this Pacer team, that's what Legler said. If you're playing this Pacer team, it's the first 2 steps that they take after a made basket that ultimately just crush teams. And I'm going to share a stat with you here soon that talks about how early the Pacers get a shot off in the shot clock. That's a big thing for Indiana, and has been a huge advantage in this series because of how quickly they get shots off. And that just dictates pace. When you're getting shots off in the first 8 seconds of a shot clock, that is dictating pace. You are forcing teams to try to stop you in 8 seconds, and you're getting good looks in 8 seconds. That's why Tyrese Halliburton is just so special to me. The fact that he can orchestrate an offense and effectively get them in good positions in 8 seconds to get shots off. And that's why when they do get late in the shot clock, they look very helter-skelter, where they're just kind of running around, flying around, trying to get open looks. And a lot of times that's when the Pacers do get into ruts, is when they get too late to the shot clock because the team just prides itself on being able to get quick shots and good shots, great looks off a pick and roll, swinging the basketball and getting really good open looks in the paint or driving and then kicking out to the 3-point line and hitting big shots. They're so efficient shooting the basketball as well. The best shooting team in this postseason and the best offensive team, best true shooting percentage team by a long shot in these playoffs. So the Pacers do it effectively, efficiently, and it's just killer. I mean, their pace. You hear guys that get knocked out of the playoffs all the time by the Pacers, or you hear former players like Pat Bev and them, and they said, you know, what makes this Pacer team so special? And every single one of their answers is like, because you try to keep up with this team that just runs for 48 minutes. Nobody wants to do that. I mean, you've had people get blatantly honest with some of the people that have asked them these questions on podcasts, and they're so transparent about it. Like, this team is difficult to guard because for 48 minutes, they run at full speed, nonstop, and now they defend you as well. It becomes such an issue to try to handle this Pacers team. And so many teams have figured that out, that this team can. And the other thing too is, like, at least when the old teams used to get out and run, you knew what the offensive options looked like who you were going to stop, right? In these big threes, or even in today's NBA, you have the two stars that you're trying to stop. But this Pacer team is so gifted offensively between Nembhard, Nesmith, and Miles Turner. And then you have Pascal Siakam and Tyrese as the 1A, 1B. It's so difficult to try to figure out where they're going to punch you from, because they can punch you from all sorts of different directions. Aaron Nesmith in the second half of this season could legitimately make an argument that he's a very viable number 2 option with what he provides on the offensive end and how good of a shooter he is. He's one of the best shooters in the NBA percentage-wise. This guy is a freak defensively too, and strength and athletic and a perfect number 2. And as he gets older and shapes his game even more, I do think he's going to become a threat for this Pacer team, who would realistically average 18 points a game. I mean, I could see that with Aaron Nesmith. So there's a lot of things coming for Aaron. And then Drew is very gifted getting to the basket, finishing in transition, finishing in traffic, but also creating offense it's a really good luxury to have somebody that can step into like a point guard role when Tyrese needs a break. Having a great secondary ball handler is also something I don't think that gets talked about enough. He is a point guard by trade, but Andrew Nembhard is just a dog, and his ability to create in the offensive end when Tyrese needs a couple of minutes to take a break off the ball, or if they're pressuring the ball, Pascal can handle it, Aaron can handle it, Drew can handle it, Drew especially. And it just makes this team impossible to stop, because how do you game plan? And there's no set offenses that they run. You know, it's hard to pick up on their plays because they don't really run plays. They run more of a get your guys open, lots of pick and roll, lots of pick and pop and pick and fade, and, you know, pinning guys down with Pascal and Miles. It just, how do you game plan against them? Like, if I gave you all the resources in the world, it would still be difficult to try to figure out, okay, who are we going to stop? How are we going to stop them? It presents a challenge that I think it'd be interesting to get an honest take from like former head coaches, like a Mike Malone. It would be really cool to get his perspective on, when you're game planning for this Indiana team, what's priority number 1, except for trying to, because every coach will say the number 1 priority against Indiana is to slow them down. But that's so broad that I could see why it's tough to play against them, and your coach is yelling at you because you can't slow down their pace. But you're like, Coach, how do I slow that down? What do you want me to do? Who do you want me to go after? Because the minute we stop Tyrese is the minute that Drew gets going. Like, it's so difficult. And I love watching this team, and all those people are out there that say, oh my gosh, the Pacers and Thunder would be an awful NBA final. You're talking about one of the best offenses in the history of offense versus one of the best defenses in the history of a defense. Like, it would be cinematic, I think, at times. So we shall see if that ends up being the matchup. But I'm really looking forward to seeing what this Pacer team can do to close out the Knicks, because this game is really important, game 5. I think if you can stay in it, then you have a really good shot in the third and fourth to just knock them out, because the first half, you're going to get their best punch. They're desperate. They know the importance of it. That crowd's going to be absolutely off the wall, crazy. But the minute they start to feel uneasy, this crowd will turn and they'll become stone cold silent. I mean, we saw what the Pacers did to the Cavs. The Cavs just, you could tell the fans were like on edge the whole game in that game 5. The Pacers can do the same thing to the Cavs. Come out, bury your shots, get Pascal Siakam going early, get Tyrese going early, and the Knicks have no shot in this game, I don't think. Looking at fast break points from game 4, 22 fast break points for the Pacers, 9 for the Knicks. Knicks had 17 turnovers. I saw a really cool stat my brother had sent me. Knicks had 17 turnovers and 17 team assists. Tyrese Halliburton had 15 assists and 0 turnovers. That's amazing. That's unbelievable. Pacers also had 29 team assists. When they get 30 assists in a game, I think the Pacers throughout the regular season, if they get 30 team assists, they've only lost 2 games in the regular season when they've done that, and now postseason. So an incredible Pacers have a lot of weird, incredible stats, and we'll kind of talk about some of them coming up, but they do things that, again, are just historic because their point guard is historic, and the way that he can create chances, and this offense just does things that just blows my mind at times. Here's the really cool graphic that I saw on X. The source is NBA.com. The Knicks are getting destroyed early in the shot clock. So it's got a breakdown here. It's got the Knicks and Pacers on one side, Pacers on the other, and then it's got the shot clock. So the first when the shot clock is between 15 and 24 seconds, when the shot clock's 7 to 15 seconds, and then the shot clock is in that 0 to 7 second window. Here's where the field goals sit for this series, this Eastern Conference Finals. So when the shot clock is in between 15 and 24 seconds, the Knicks have shot 71 field goals in that time. Their effective field goal rate, or field goal percentage, there is 50%. That's what the field goal percentage is for that time period in the shot clock, 15 to 24 seconds. And the best way that I can describe effective field goal percentage is that 2-pointers have the same kind of weight that they would normally have. So the 2-pointers, so if you shot 4 for 10 from the field and you shot only 2-pointers, your field goal percentage would be 40%. Your effective field goal percentage would be 40%. 3-pointers count more of a weight of, so like it's a 1-to-1 ratio, whereas a 3-pointer would count as a 1.5. So it adds to the effective field goal percentage just because of the higher level of difficulty in shooting a 3-pointer in the NBA. So that's where that balances out. But anyway, like I was saying, effective field goal percentage, 50% for the Knicks. And you will be able to tell just how drastic the margins are here by this next one. So when the Pacers are shooting a shot in between that 15 to 24 second window, they've gotten 130 field goal attempts in that time. That's almost double the amount of field goal attempts by the Pacers than the Knicks. during the first 8 seconds of the shot clock, the Pacers are shooting almost 70 more shots a game, in this series than the Knicks. 130. Their effective field goal percentage on shots in the first 8 seconds of the shot clock is 71.9%. That's right, 71.9%. Again, the Knicks were 50% right on the nose. They have a better shooting percentage by 21.9% than the Knicks in the first 8 seconds of the shot clock. And they've attempted 59 more shots, 59 more shots than the Knicks in that time span. That's crazy. Now, you look at the Knicks, 7 to 15 seconds left on the shot clock. They've attempted 175 field goals. That's where they're most comfortable. And that's because their offense is a half court offense. They're not a transition team. They're just not. And they've got a better pace than a lot of teams, but they rely so heavily on Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson. And both of them are half court players. They're really good, effective half court players, but they're half court players. In that span, they shoot 175 shots. They shoot 57% from the field, effective field goal percentage in that span. In the 7 to 15 second span for the Pacers shoot 147 at 52.4%. So less effective than the Knicks in that time frame and way less effective than what they shoot in the first 8 seconds of the shot clock. Here's the one that's glaring for the Knicks and the Pacers. So with 0 to 7 seconds left on the shot clock, the Knicks have attempted 92 field goals in that time. Their effective field goal percentage is 51.6%. The Pacers have shot 71 field goals in that time. They do not like to shoot late in the clock. And this is where the Pacers really do struggle. So if you're going to have success against the Pacers, you try to slow them down to make them and force them to shoot shots later in the shot clock. And that's the goal of every defense, obviously. But still, the Pacers are far less effective. And by that, I mean like they've shot 71 field goals in that time, that 0 to 7 seconds on the shot clock. Their effective field goal percentage in this series on those shots is 35.9%, which is really bad. So advantage Pacers when you get a shot up in the first 8 seconds of the game. And that's why the emphasis on pace is so important. And that's why Rick Carlisle, as you saw him in game 4, just this constantly like field goal made, run. And you'll hear them run. You'll hear the assistant coaches when the mics are close enough, you'll hear them go, run, out and run. So they're constantly getting on these guys about getting up the floor because if you look at the data, I mean, it's staggering. The high percentage that they shoot, why wouldn't you go that early in the shot clock? And so then somebody made a really good point. Who was I listening to? Oh, man. Was it Kevin Bowen from 1070 The Fan, maybe? Or Jeremiah Johnson. It was Jeremiah Johnson. That's who it was. So 1070 The Fan with Boyd and Bowen and them, they had James Johnson. They had JJ on, right? And Jeremiah Johnson was talking about the fact that he felt comfortable when other fans didn't with the Pacers shooting the threes that they did, where I think they missed 3 in a row. And eventually they get a good basket. But he said he didn't have a problem with it. And the more you read these stats, I guess he's got a good point. I mean, this Pacer team is so effective when they shoot shot in the first 8 seconds that you live with the Tyrese Halliburton pulling up into a 3 with 17 seconds on the shot clock. You're like, that's a quick shot. But if he's open and that's what the Pacers are effective in doing, and that obviously, when that water finds its level in that percentage, I mean, you live with that. Again, it's not like they shoot, 18 shots in that 15 to 24 seconds. They have a really high effective rate. It's 130 shots that they've taken in that span of 15 to 24 on the shot clock and have a 71.9% field goal percentage, effective field goal percentage. So I'll stop harping on that just because it's probably annoying, but it's just so crazy, that stat. Like I saw that today and I was like, well, no wonder they emphasize. And I think kudos to their data team. And I know a lot of this has to do with like, that's what their focus is. So they're going to be effective in that. But look at the Knicks, right? The highest effective field goal percentage that they have in any of those spans is a 57%. The Pacers, 130 shots and they're 71.9. Like that it's mind blowing looking at that stat. So that's why the Pacers shoot early shots. And that's why it's so important. That's why the number one thing on my rundown is keeping the pace. The next thing up is Aaron Nesmith and Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson had 31 points. So naturally you'd have thought, well, Aaron Nesmith hobbled by the ankle injury. Jalen Brunson, very good scorer. That's somewhat reasonable. That's not a 40-point game like he dropped in game 1. And honestly, there were moments, obviously, that Brunson didn't play very well. And in the second quarter, he only had 2 points. So I'd say, okay, decent job by Aaron Nesmith. Well, if you look at the stats even closer, Jalen Brunson with Aaron Nesmith on him, 30 minutes, on the floor. But Nesmith guarded him majority of the time, anytime he's on the floor, unless there's a switch. With Nesmith on Brunson, or Brenton Nesmith on the floor to cause Brunson problems, Brunson was 3 of 13 from the field with 10 points. With Nesmith off the court, Brunson had 7 minutes where that happened. He was 6 of 6 from the field, 7 of 8 from the free throw line, and had 21 points. Brunson had 10 shooting plays and 21 points in 7 minutes, which is crazy. Like, that's nuts how much he terrorizes the Pacers defense when Aaron Nesmith's not out there on the floor. But when Aaron Nesmith's out there on the floor, he turns Jalen Brunson into a pedestrian. It's incredible. And we knew this stat last year too. He had a very similar kind of stat last year where I think Brunson shot under 40% for most of that series when Nesmith was guarding him. Brunson struggles with size, and we knew that. We've known that. We knew that. I think what Rick has to do, and it's too bad that Aaron's ankle's not 100%. He is listed as questionable for Game 5. I still think he plays, but Nesmith has to match Brunson's minutes on Friday or on Thursday. I think that's something as Rick that you have to do. Is if Brunson comes off the floor, Nesmith comes off the floor. Brunson goes on the floor, Nesmith's on the floor as much as possible. I mean, there might be a couple minutes where that can't happen because Brunson plays a ton of minutes, but it would be a crime knowing what you know on how well Aaron Nesmith has played him on a bum ankle and not have him out there guarding Jalen for 95% of this game. Again, Jalen Brunson in the fourth, 2 points, 1 of 3 from the field, and only 1 assist in 7 minutes and 55 seconds. With Nesmith on the court in this series, the Pacers have outscored the Knicks by 9 points per 100 possessions per the NBA.com. Without him, the Pacers have been outscored by 18.1%. Points per 100 possessions. So it's clear he is a catalyst on the defensive end, and he's become arguably the Pacers' second best option in scoring. He and Pascal kind of trade off games where the scoring has been really good in the series. So Aaron Nesmith is crucial in this game. Obviously, if he can't go, maybe that it swelled up and stuff as he flew and he's just not ready to go on in game 5, then that would be a big loss for the Pacers. But I think he plays, and when he plays, he goes 100%. And to be honest with you, there were a few moments where it did kind of look like he was a little tentative on the ankle, but for the most part, I mean, he dunked one over Josh Hart in the first quarter, and I was like, oh, okay, he must be feeling okay. But then there were some moments where he couldn't quite turn as quickly as he normally would to get the balls, and I felt like that had to do something with him thinking about the ankle. So we'll see what happens in Game 5, but I believe he plays, and I believe Cat plays too. Tyrese the Terror is the next bullet point on the rundown. He had 32 points, 12 rebounds, 15 assists, and 0 turnovers in Game 4. Only players in NBA history to record 270-plus points, 135-plus assists, 80-plus rebounds in 14-game span in the playoffs. The only players to do that, LeBron James, Nikola Jokic, Russell Westbrook, and Magic Johnson. Add Tyrese to that mix. In the history of the NBA, there are only 3 players in the history of the postseason in the NBA that have posted a 30, 10, and 15 game. Oscar Robertson, Nikola Jokic, and Tyrese Halliburton. Halliburton is the only player in NBA history to record 30 points, 15 assists, 5 3-pointers, and 0 turnovers. And he's done that 3 times. That's crazy. Only player in history, and then he's done that 3 times. In the Eastern Conference Finals, Halliburton's averaged 24.2 points per game, 11 assists per game, 7 rebounds, 2.5 steals, of splits of 46, 33, and 81. The most unbelievable part, really, is the amount of turnovers that he's had. Halliburton now has 44 assists to 6 turnovers in 153 minutes in the Eastern Conference Finals. He also became the lone Pacer at the top of the chart for most playoff triple-doubles in Pacers history. He passed Victor Oladipo, Paul George, and Mark Jackson. He's now got 2 in the postseason. They all had 1. And then career games with 15-plus assists and 0 turnovers. John Stockton leads NBA history in his 19-year career. He's had 14 games with 15-plus assists and 0 turnovers. Chris Paul has had 13 in his 20 seasons. And third on that list is now Tyrese Halliburton, who has 11. So he's only in his 5th season. So he's passed Steve Nash, who only had 7. Muggsy had 7. I say only. That's still crazy. 15 assists or 15-plus assists and 0 turnovers is just unheard of. And again, Stockton 14, Chris Paul 13, Tyrese Halliburton in third with 11. And he's played 14 years less than Stockton and 15 years less than Chris Paul. So I'd say he's gonna pass that pretty easily. That's crazy. So that's the Tyrese Halliburton effect. And the reason why he's a talking point is you got to get him going. And he came out in Game 5 in Cleveland and looked like the guy that just wanted to be the assassin in that game. I think he'll do the same thing in New York. He'll come out looking for his shot. He'll want to put the Knicks away. He thrives in negative energy. He thrives in hostile environments. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Ty does off of this, what arguably could be the best Pacer performance in postseason history we've ever seen. Pascal Siakam is the next up on the rundown, his involvement. So Pascal Siakam in this series has averaged 25.8 points per game, 4.8 rebounds per game, 3.3 assists per game, a true shooting percentage of 60%. And in his time, he's played 23 games at Madison Square Garden. He averages 19 points a game in the Garden, 6.9 rebounds, 3.7 assists. He also had a career high of 52 points when playing there as a Toronto Raptor against the Knicks in December 2022. And then he scored 39 points in Game 2 of the 2025 Eastern Conference Finals. So this conference finals, which was a playoff career high for Pascal. And he's coming off a game, and we say this all the time as Pacer fans, and I've seen it in every podcast, heard it in every podcast, seen it on every X person's account. Whenever Pascal has a big night, and it just, when I say Pascal Siakam had 30 points, like that blows my mind because I didn't even feel like he was that involved, like that crazy. I thought maybe he had over 20 something, but he had 30 points in Game 4. He hit 2 threes in the fourth quarter that were absolutely huge. He had 3 total for the game, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 11 points in that fourth quarter. And like I said, those 2 threes were huge because it was, I think both of them were when the Knicks had pulled it back within 6, and then he hit them to go up 9. I think both of them were. And now Pascal Siakam has the 5th most 30-point playoff games in Pacers history, which is incredible. Next talking point, Benedict Mathurin in the bench. The Pacers bench on Tuesday night had 36 points. The Knicks bench had 21 in Game 4. Benedict Mathurin had 20 points of those 36 in just 12 minutes played, which is incredible for that little of minutes to score that much. It was nuts. Pacers bench is averaging 33.7 points a game, and they're only tied with, you guessed it, Oklahoma City Thunder for the best bench in the postseason. They both average 33.7 points a game. So depth is the key, obviously. And both OKC and the Pacers are up 3-1 in their series with the chance to go to the NBA Finals because of their depth, because of their bench scoring, their ability to run as many bodies at you as possible to wear you down. And it's worked with both teams. So obviously what you have to do in the NBA is grow your depth, and you should be solid. But teams just don't do that. So Pacers and Thunder would be an absolute crazy series just because it would be 8 to 9 guys just running constantly at each other, which I think would be a lot of fun. Ben hasn't been that good in this series, and he's been decent in his first postseason experience. I think that's what so many people forget, is it is his first postseason experience. So with it comes a lot of learning, and postseason basketball is just so very different. Every possession counts, every second counts. And I think that's something that Benedict has to learn, and he's had to learn that in the regular season as well. I think he's had a lot of growing to do, and his game is very ISO heavy. And to have to fit into a system that is not ISO heavy at all, that actually it really doesn't work if somebody is an isolation kind of player. And, Ben's had to adjust his game. They want him to become a better passer. They want him to become more of a facilitator, to swing the ball, to not have the ball stick. And that's all what Benedict Mathurin has done his whole career. So he's having to learn a whole new way of playing the basketball that he's used to playing. And I really do. I think he's taken it with like a champ. I think he's taken it so very well. There's a lot of criticism. Obviously, he's a lottery pick and one of the highest draft picks that the Pacers have ever had. And there's just so much potential. There's so much raw ability. He's 22 years old, so he's still very young. But that game, I feel like it's a turning point. And I'm saying this because I feel like he's understanding what it takes, right? I think he's had to get knocked down, right? He had to. Now he just feeds off energy. So I'm interested to see what he does in game 5. I really hope that they incorporate him a little bit more in game 5. I think there's even moments where, because Ben Shepherd, I love Ben. He does a lot of great things, but he just can't guard Jalen Brunson. There's moments where Aaron gets a rest where Jalen Brunson's still out there. Why not try Benedict Mathurin on him for a little bit? Just, a minute or two. Give Aaron a little bit of a break if Andrew's not out there too. So I don't know. I think that you can, and another thing too is Ben, I think, could give you some of those small Karl Anthony Town minutes where he's, guarding Towns a couple possessions, where you throw a smaller body at Towns because he doesn't really play as well against the smaller guys for some reason. But yeah, I think Ben's got to be really happy with his performance, and I think there's a lot of confidence there. And once the confidence gets going, we've seen what it can do. If he can average 10 points off the bench, that's what we need. Like consistently every night, if he can average 10 to 12 points off the bench as we make this run, then the Pacers are going to be in really good shape. He's averaged 9.9 points a game this postseason. He had 11.4 average against the Cavs, 10.3 against the Bucks. So he's been slightly regressing, but I just feel like he really struggled ever since that DeAndre Hunter thing. And I'm sure there was conversations that he had with Rick Carlisle and the staff in the front office, and just like, you can't do that. Veteran players, you can't do that. But then I think it kind of shook him a little bit. Confidence wasn't there. And then he's starting to get less minutes and kind of fading out of the rotation. Ben Shepherd over him. And so Rick, had to go to Benedict because of Aaron's injury. I mean, they tried to get Aaron as many breaks as possible, I think, and that forced Carlisle to go with more Mathurin minutes, and it really worked out. 20 points in 12 minutes is an incredible clip. There's not many people in the whole NBA that can do that, but Benedict Mathurin is one of those guys. Keys to the game. That's what's up next. Pace, like I said, get out and run, get Tyrese going and on a make, on a miss. Pace in the Garden. I mean, if you're running up and down the floor wearing this team out, because I feel like this team is starting to break up a little bit. I feel like they're starting to just, their axles are coming off. They're grinding each possession. You just keep running at them, and I think you'll wear them out in this game 5. Aaron Nesmith minutes need to match Jalen Brunson's in game 5 for the Pacers to have a really good shot to win this game at the Garden. And then intensity and seizing the moment of the Garden. It's going to be very intense. It's going to be very desperate. The Knicks are going to be in really good shape if they can come out and stop the Pacers from running around. I think they can do it. I think that they'll throw everything that they have at them, the kitchen sink, as some would say. This is the last game for the Knicks. Every game's the last game for the Knicks. So you got to act like that for the Pacers too. Pacers have to go out and act like theirs is also a win or go home kind of thing, because this is the most desperate team that you'll see probably in the whole NBA playoffs that you've been in. Even that Cleveland team, I don't think you've seen desperation quite like what you're going to see on Thursday night. I just hope the Pacers match that intensity, because after really good games that they had, like in game 4, Sometimes they let off the gas. In game 5, it looks a lot different. And after really good games, you want to see Tyrese involved in the offense. But there's been games where we've seen him kind of let off the gas and not be as engaged because of the really good night that he had. And they try to take him out as much as possible early in the game. And when you're not getting Ty involved early in the game, sometimes that gets into him. And again, I feel like the Knicks are going to try everything in their power to take Tyrese out of this game. And Ty's got to be able to cope with that. I think the biggest thing for him is get to the basket. Don't settle for threes. Get into the rim. Get some guys into foul trouble. Make guys make decisions. Make guys recover defensively. Go after Karl Anthony Towns. That pick and roll between he and Turner constantly until Towns and Brunson can figure out what they're doing. So, and Bridges. I think you just got to continue to use Ty in your offense early on. Get Pascal involved as well early on, and I think the Pacers will be fine. 5 predictions. So the last thing on the rundown, another 20 and 10 game from Ty. I think he does go over 20 points. There was a stat, again, they're 31-4 when Tyrese Halliburton has 20 points this season, which is incredible. 15 points from Nembhard and Nesmith. I think both of them score 15 points. I think you get a really good bounce back game from Andrew Nembhard, and I think Nesmith loves shooting in Madison Square Garden. Remember, he was a perfect 8 for 8 when he shot there in Game 7 last year. He was also a 30-point scorer and absolutely ignited that Pacers offense in Game 1. Obi Toppin has a 10-plus game. I think Toppin finally has a really good game in this series and goes over 10 points. I feel like he likes playing in the Garden as well, because it's his former team. He feels a little bit more comfortable there, and they gave him a lot of crap when he was leaving in Game 1. I think Ty has less than 2 turnovers in this game. I think that he almost best his performance in Game 3 as far as the turnovers are concerned. I think maybe he gets 1 turnover, but I'm going to say that, again, he has a really good game, and they're all like, wow, he really just doesn't turn the ball over. And then my last prediction, I think that the Indiana Pacers go into Madison Square Garden and end the Knicks season in Game 5. I've got confidence that the Pacers will win and move on to their first NBA Finals since the year 2000, behind the depth, the scoring, and just the involvement of all of their starting players. I feel like we're really due for one of those games where all their starters are in double figures and shoot the lights out. And I think that they're going to come out with even more intensity than we've seen from this Pacer team, because they know what's in store for them if they win this game. So if you made it this far, thanks for listening. We really appreciate the support so far. It's been great. I've had a lot of really good interactions in the comments and people liking the videos and all sorts of different things. So we're gaining a lot of steam. It's been fun. I can't wait to do a week lead up if we get to that point for the NBA Finals. I would love a week in between, because I think we could do some really interesting content in between Game 5 and possibly Game 1 of the NBA Finals. But again, this series is far from over. The Pacers have to do what they need to do, and I think that they finally do get that done. But like I said, thank you for listening. We're on YouTube over at the Pacers Fever Show. You can find us anywhere that you find your podcast as well. Make sure to rate, like, subscribe, comment. It helps people find us. If you want to give us 5 stars in the audio versions, that helps people find us there. And then YouTube, subscribe, like, and comment. Again, that helps a lot of people in the fandom find this podcast. And I'm always looking for a co-host. So if you're willing to jump on as a co-host, or if you want to jump on as a guest in the next couple of days because of the lead up maybe to an NBA Finals, or if you want to jump on to preview Game 6, Game 7, hopefully it doesn't get to that point. But if you want to get on and talk about the Pacers with me, just shoot me a message and we can talk about it. And then if you're willing to cover the Indiana Fever, I'm also doing the Fever as well. So that's why it's called the Pacers Fever Show. We cover everything Indiana Fever. Caitlin Clark out for 2 weeks with that quad injury. So the Fever are going to have to do everything that they're doing without her. And that's going to be a crucial stretch for them in this season. So looking forward to covering that. And if you want to jump on and host with me, then just shoot me a message over on X, or you can email us at thepacersfevershow@gmail.com. Again, thank you for listening. And remember, this game is very important for the Knicks. So if they come out and they win this game, it's not the end of the world for the Pacers. The Pacers just got to go home and deal with what they know they have to deal with. But don't get too down if the Pacers get behind in this one. This Knicks team is going to be very desperate. You're going to get your best shot from them. But like I said, I've got all the confidence in the world that this team is going to go in and take care of business. And I'm looking forward to watching Game 5 tomorrow night, again, on TNT at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Pacers will tip off for Game 5 of this Eastern Conference Finals series with a chance to go to their first NBA Finals since the year 2000. So if you're excited for that game, shoot me some comments. Let me know your thoughts, your predictions. And I can't wait to talk to you guys after Game 5.